back to another episode of the ADH Dads. I'm your host, CJ.
I'm JJ.
And we're joined here by our third co-host, Caden, below me. So if you hear some screeching or some YouTube background noise, we do what we must. How you doing, brother?
Yeah. Hey, how are you, bud? I am back from vacation last week where I got to see the Grand Canyon and some other nature wonders, and it was quite remarkable seeing something on such a grand scale. I had never been before, and I guess what I want to say, just a brief message to everybody, is try and get out and see what's out there, and really, take it in, because we I think we sit and we look at our screens so much at the time, and we kind of really don't appreciate enough sometimes what's out there, free of charge a lot of times, to enjoy. And it's usually on a grand scale. When you get there in person, you see it. It's almost too much to take in. But it's just something that, I think that had I not had the opportunity to see some of that stuff, I don't think I would have this great appreciation. But because I did get to go and witness it in person, it's something that can't be described unless you're there. And for that reason alone, I think my encouragement is for everybody to get out and explore. I mean, I got mountains right here in my neighborhood, and then the Grand Canyon is it's like reverse mountains, and it goes so far down. I was telling you just a moment ago, I saw a helicopter taking off from the I guess the floor, we'll call it that, the floor of the Grand Canyon, and it was just a little speck. And man, looking over the edge of that rim was intimidating, exciting, all the things. And yeah, it's just I don't know. After I've been away from it for just a few days, I think about it in my head, and it's just not quite doing it justice. So yeah, get out there and enjoy. How about you, buddy? How you been?
I've been good, brother. Yeah, I went to the Grand Canyon when I was 8 or 9 years old with my grandparents. I used to have a cousin that lived in Oklahoma, and we lived in Arizona, so we would take that 2-day drive up to go visit during the summer, and drove my cousin back with us, and we stayed in the Grand Canyon for a couple of days with the little hitchback trailer. One of the ones that you crank and it accordions up, and you stay in there. So it was really overwhelming as a kid, and I've always really wanted to go back because it was really beautiful. Definitely something I want to do with the kids too. We've got our Hawaii trip coming up in a couple of weeks here, so we're going to go out there and do some exploring too and have some really good time. So really looking forward to that, man. Let's put some summer memories in the bank.
Yeah. Hawaii is a place that I went to when I was an infant. So my memories of Hawaii were not much, but I do have a story from that. Apparently my godparents and my parents, they were there, and they took me as an infant, and they rented a convertible, and they had me in the back seat or something, in a car seat. And I got a sunburn, apparently, as an infant, because I was just having the sun bearing down on my completely helpless body, as they were probably joyriding, having a great time. And then they looked down and probably thought, oh, crap, seeing my, candy apple red skin, and realizing that they probably needed to do a little bit better job of protecting their little baby. But so far, I haven't had any skin cancer, so I'm doing all right. But yeah, that should be a lot of fun for you guys, going hiking and stuff. One thing that I kind of took notice of too, that I don't know, I was a little bit bothered by it. Regardless of where you go, even if it's national parks and stuff, it just seems like people leave stuff on the ground. They bring things and they drop them. They throw trash on the ground, and I don't know. It's so easy to take back, what you brought in. But yet people, even though I'm sure there's plenty of, there are signs everywhere that say, pick up after yourself and stuff. Don't feed the animals and stuff. I saw somebody like petting a squirrel. Somebody was giving something to a squirrel. Yeah. People are messy, and they disobey, and yeah, it gets a little bit disheartening. But I don't know. I guess we've got park rangers there to help us out. But yeah, that was one thing I was saddened to see.
I don't know.
Yeah, we humans love to leave our mark everywhere. If I turned this web camera onto full view, you would see the mess here that I've got. But that's something I always try to preach to wherever we go is like leave it better than you found it. And I try to get the kids to pick up trash, but having a neurodivergent kid with sensitivity issues, getting her to pick up somebody else's trash is quite a challenge at times. But yeah, I feel you, man. Gosh, and summertime coming up here, there's going to be a lot of messes around the house, huh? Are you doing summer camp, or you having kiddo home with you, or how you navigating the work schedule with the time off from school?
Yeah, Cohen's going to be going to so his last week of school is this week. And starting next week he's going to the university here, University of Utah, Camp U, and we're excited for him. He's not excited about it. He did it last year, and yeah, just had a tough time. I'm not sure what exactly took place, but yeah, it's hard. I remember the first day of camp last year. These boys in his group, they knew each other and they were chasing each other around. So he just decided, oh, I'll just chase them too. And he tapped somebody on the shoulder, and they looked at him like he was an alien. Like, what is this guy doing? And I just felt bad for him because he was trying to just directly integrate himself as quickly as possible and try and make connections. But these kids had already established connections, so they were keeping themselves kind of at least an arm's length from him. And so yeah, he struggled socially, and that was tough. And but this year, hopefully, with the I guess the little prep work we did, and some of the counselors are going to be returning, maybe that'll be more comfort for him. And then he's also got a couple of the weeks this year he's going to be doing zoo camp. So going to the camp at the zoo, which I think could be awesome. I honestly don't know what exactly they'll do. He'll
Oh
probably
man,
want to
that's
go and pet
that's
all the animals,
expensive in
but
my neck of the woods. We looked into that, the zoo
oof.
camp. It's expensive.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is no joke. It can really add up. In fact, when he goes to public school, so we don't pay his tuition. It's taken care of. So anything for the camps just seems to be a lot, especially in a city that costs so much. But yeah, we're excited for it. I'm hoping for the best, and each day that he has camp, I'm also looking forward to continuing to use that rewards chart that we talk about, and hopefully gaining some ground in terms of having a good conversation about what his day looked like. But that's an ongoing thing, and we'll see. I got to keep my expectations realistic, because I have a kiddo who generally does tell me he doesn't remember or he doesn't want to talk about it, so I can't force the topic. But the rewards chart definitely does help. The point system, I should say, helps quite a bit, at least in him getting motivated to talk about some of the good things that took place. So yeah.
Yeah, we just started a new therapy too through the regional center here. Here we are a year later. When we applied, we finally got approved and everything taken care of. For certain um, therapies or extracurricular classes, to help with social stuff. And the first thing that we had was, other than initial talk between the adults, was she came to a park, and we took the kids to the park, and she didn't meet the kids. She just watched, observed from afar how the kids interacted, and some of the things that she can help work on. And it's basically kind of like an observed play time where they go, and as they watch the kids play, they kind of go and try to bridge communication, and suggest certain games for them to interact, and certain ways of getting what they want out of an interaction, without that lack of empathy piece, or at least imploring some empathy during it. So excited to see where that goes throughout the summer here. We'll have updates on that, I guess. But yeah, man, I wanted to talk about something that I've been struggling with lately, which is the clean, getting back to the stuff all over the place. Um, I grew up in a very strict, clean environment. My stepmom was very probably undiagnosed OCD, to some degrees, and we had towels that were for the hands, towels for the dishes, and towels that were just decorative that you looked at, And we had couches that you could sit on and couches that you couldn't sit on that were just in there for looks. And pillows that you could use and pillows that you couldn't. And it was a lot to keep track of, I remember, as a kid, and very overwhelming, um, because I just didn't get it. And I always felt like a source of tension in my household as a messy kid. When I got older and I got out on my own, started living with other messy people and roommates, and was finding myself, I found that a clean space is a very clear mind for me. And I lived with that as like a strength of mine. But as I've gone through many years of living with roommates, living on my own, living with kids and a spouse, you know, um, I don't know if it's necessarily a strength, as it is a source of maybe trauma and tension, and an unmet expectation, unrealistic expectations of how our kids are able to handle certain responsibilities, or able to even ingrain certain concepts or habits in their head. And the more I think about it, especially in those moments where I bring the kids to my parents' house, and my stepmom is trying to keep this rigid, strict, clean environment, and how it can re-traumatize me into feeling this scared little kid, like I'm not doing anything right, and how that must translate to the kids, and how the anxiety that I see her going through when the expectations aren't met. So I just kind of wanted to talk about it. There's lots of theories out there, lots of different ways of handling it. Some parents just say close the door, let them have the messy room. I've tried that, but that trauma in me just like keeps wanting to, like, open the door and clean it, or like get them to clean it. Oh, he doesn't have a messy room. His sisters have a messy room. Just to make it clear, he's not the infiltrator of the mess. He
Pass
has a
him the
clean
buck.
room. Yeah. So I'm curious,
Well,
how's this work in your house? What's your experience with this?
well, yeah, actually, I'll have a question for you in a minute too, with regard to what you said. But yeah, I would say there was definitely a trauma attached to cleanliness, and what it means to keep a clean space. Um, I wasn't necessarily included in the cleaning chores when I was little. And then at some point, there was an expectation put on me that I needed to, you know, keep a certain, look to my room, but it wasn't a really clear message. So I think it meant, just probably what it meant is, put the things back where you got them from, and keep them off the floor and stuff. And so there was an unspoken, but yet honestly a an expectation placed on me that I needed to be a certain way, and that was hard because I think kids need certain guidance and modeling in order for them to be able to make a successful transition into doing chores and maintaining a place for themselves. But also, I suggest the idea that being a clean person is also a part of who you are. So it should be, in some ways, something that you have agency over yourself. So it might not look the same as the next person. And the reason why I bring that up is, I had a mother who wanted to always have a clean space, and she took it to the point of, this represents her, and represents her public image as well. Even though for the most part, the people that we see outside of the house, they didn't come into our house. Um, but yeah, it was something where she had a certain level of insecurity about herself, and would be pretty nervous to invite people over, and would probably even talk to them, like give them the rundown, like, oh yeah, this sorry, the place isn't super clean. She would essentially call out herself in front of somebody because she had a certain insecurity about how people perceived her ability to maintain a clean house. And then when it came to my, my room and just my way of doing things, there was a disconnect between us. And she would sometimes walk around the house and she'd let out these sighs like, she'd point out all the things in her brain that she wanted done differently. And she also pointed out in her brain that she needed somebody else to do it, but she didn't know how to communicate it. So it came across as anxious and tense and upset, and expectations already not being met, and then it would be a source of tension, a source of conflict for us. So that was tough. That was tough to deal with that. And then now, I mean, even myself, still I have that. Every now and then I'll have that image of myself come to play, like, I'll say, oh, the house is kind of chaos, sorry, it's a little messy in here. And so I still have an insecurity about myself based on what I learned. So that's kind of what happened to me, as it relates to
Do
my
you
childhood.
find that tension in the way that it came out in your mom? Do you find that comes out with your kid when you feel that? And do
Mm.
you sometimes echo in the same way that your mom echoed you, or do you have a different mindset or approach to it?
Well, in some ways, I would say there's a similar thing where I think the big thing is consistency, and because I haven't had enough consistency in the message, and doing things, putting things away with Cohen, I would say that you could probably draw some direct comparison between the two. And so that would look like, I Cohen would leave some things out, and I wouldn't pick up on it. And then other things he'd leave out, and I'd notice right away, and I'd say, all right, well, if you're not going to clean that up, remember a rule, that it gets put away somewhere, where you can't use it for a week. And so that's something that, it's on me. But I can say, if I am consistent with it, he does not complain. He'll only whine and groan if I haven't been consistent with it. So last night, we or a couple nights ago, we went to the pool, and he got a bunch of toys out, and he brings a big backpack full of toys. Some of them are made for the pool and some are not. And he he dumped all the toys out, and then it was time to go. And I told him, all right, buddy, you got to pick up these toys, and gotta bring them back. You took them out, so therefore you're going to put them away in the backpack so we can go. And he just didn't want to do it. He kept wanting to play, and I said, all right, bud, this is it. I'm starting to pick these up. This is going to be something that you're not going to have access to for the week. And he, groaned and whined and stuff. And that was something that I was consistent with, that he understood. So he let go of it. But he might have complained a little bit. And the reason I believe that he continues to whine and complain when he does is because I haven't applied that rule across the board regularly, because he knows it's not me trying to, be hard on him and be mean to him. It's me just trying to keep that structure in place. So again, it's on me. It's on the parent to be consistent. And if you're just, giving out a message of, you're doing nothing, you're no good, then the kids are going to feel terrible, and they'll probably continue to not pick up, and they will feel lesser, and you'll probably end up with a messier house because the message hasn't been delivered correctly. Now, I could say when one funny story: when I was in college, I was living in an apartment, and it got to the point where a couple of the roommates were very, very messy, and they had a bathroom they used. I had a bathroom that I was using, and their bathroom had just started growing, the black mold and stuff, and they threw all their empty toilet paper rolls just on the floor of the bathroom, and there was just, it's just a pile of nastiness. And my joke was that it got so bad in there that something like grew out of it, grew up out of this nastiness, this nasty pile of whatever. And then it was so bad that it itself also died and contributed itself to the mess. It was so gross. So yeah, I think there's a certain level of cleanliness that we should all have in order to, I guess, just live in some sort of comfort and some sort of health, safety. So when we lose that, I think it's something that can cause issue in our relationships and within ourselves. We're not living our best selves, or we're not even living dare I say, a safe self. So yeah, there's room for improvement, but I think there's also room for compromise, and not being such an anal tight person when it comes to our cleanliness. And then the one question that I had for you, because I just jabbered for a while there, is, the word that you used was, for when you were growing up, was strict. Why did you choose that word?
I think it was because of the constant underlying feeling that was always there of like it it almost felt like if you don't do this I can't love you, and that was like always the one thing. I mean, I've spoken on some points of contention that I've had in my relationship with my own step parents, and some of the history that was there between marital relations between dad, mom, stepmom, that dynamic. And I always felt that there was some trauma there that was placed on me that I didn't understand, and until I grew up and learned the full story. Um, and I, had a really hard time connecting to my stepmom. And that was the one thing, the constant thing that was always a problem. And I always felt maybe she used that as a way to justify her feelings of resentment towards me because of that past trauma in her relationship with my father. And not really able to identify that as a kid. Again, more as a kid, I identified it as, if I don't clean she won't love me. I can't get affection for her unless I do this perfectly. And and still to this day, you go and clean and she's right. You go to sweep the kitchen and she's right there. That's the garage broom, not the kitchen broom. And then she's up sweeping right behind you every step as you're cleaning. And I think that there's a lot of stuff there for her, and why she feels that need, an expectation. But it felt like it was an expectation that I could never meet as a kid. And I remember having this really like profound moment of, um, it wasn't until maybe like 15, 16, where I really started to hear it and I started to do it and incorporate it. And I remember thinking like, oh God, like why couldn't I have just done this sooner? Do it when you're told, or do it now rather than putting it off. And how many times have I been told that in my 17 years of life, but it just always sounded like Charlie Brown grown-up talk, womp 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 womp, in one ear and out the other. And one day it was like my brain just finally formulated enough to be like, oh, okay, we're retaining that. And it was like a day, and I remember having that feeling and remembering to myself, God, I gotta remember what this feels like. That when I was so young and up until now, it wasn't in my realm of priorities. It wasn't that I was intentionally putting it off to piss her off, or procrastinating, or trying to get away with procrastinating until she did it. There was no intent there. It was just the way that my mind worked as an adolescent, and the selfish, need meet basis of fulfilling needs. I want to do this, I want to do this, until it became of a point of maturity where I started being able to exercise more empathy and include other opinions and those boundaries and those expectations, and how they attach to the identity of self, like you're talking about. That these things can make up a person, and aren't just things that they expect or do, but they could make up a person's story and experience. And I think I really started to understand that as I kind of was on my own independence, away from stepmom. And I remember calling her a lot of times going, gosh, I'm so grateful for that, you know. Now I think it's a bit of both. And I think it's a very fine line of knowing thyself, and what those expectations are for clean room, clean mind kind of mindset, and what makes you tick, what helps you get into the zone and into that flow state, what you need to work, what your space is organized like. I think you need to know that. But for me personally, I had a lot of difficulty understanding those parts of me, and I put that on other people. With roommates, I remember waking up and being ki- kitchen was a catastrophe from the night before. And I like went into anger mode, grumbling, passive aggressive, shoving dishes around too hard to wake everybody up, cussing to myself, and everyone's coming out like, "What's up, dude?" And I'm just like, "Well, yeah, no, nothing. I'm gonna do it." Just kind of like my dynamic was when I was a kid, and I think that it like hurt a lot of relationships that I had. In my previous marriage with my wife and the expectations that I had there, and versus friends and roommates. And, it's something that I've really had been teetering back and forth on, really reading every book and trying everything from, like I said, to just close the door and let them have their own space to throwing away the toys that are left on the floor at the end of the night. And then, at the end of the week, don't throw away the toys. Okay. We've ended up with an empty toy room at the end of the week, and we've got all the toys hidden somewhere. And the kid, but it's a journey for me that I have to really understand that it's something that I need for myself. But the more that I try to put those expectations on other people, to accomplish for me, the more detrimental my relationships can get. And this trauma in me comes out in unexpected subconscious ways that I really kind of have to put into check and really be conscious of how I go about communicating that, because I had such a negative experience with it. And I feel like sometimes I project that negative experience and expectations onto the kids without realizing that adolescent epiphany that I had of like, oh wow, this just isn't important to them. They don't, it's not they're being intentional and want to upset me, and or that they're even maybe doing it for attention. It's just that they're just on to the next thing. We're playing. Now I want a snack. Now I got to go to the bathroom. Now I want to watch TV. And, everything gets left in the wake without a second glance.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to just have fun all day and, let somebody else take care of the mess? If you could find a way to make that possible, that'd be awesome. I think, I would like to find a job that's roller coaster rider or something, and just go and have fun all day, and then come home and pay somebody else to take care of all the stuff because my roller coaster riding job paid me so well. But that's, it's not the reality most people live in. Um, and I think the thing that I wanted to kind of focus on with what you were saying is that it sounded like there were people in your story that maybe didn't quite know themselves how to define what was satisfactory and what was satisfactory for their angle of doing things. And then they also, because they were struggling with, dare I say, perfectionism, they applied those two concepts to you. So no, it doesn't go this way, no, it doesn't go that way, without first having the conversation. So we sometimes apply expectations to others when we don't even necessarily have a full understanding of our own expectations for ourselves. And then therefore we're stuck in this loop, right, where we wanted to have the perfect outcome, yet we don't know what that really looks like. And of course we know perfection is not a possibility. So we got those two things working against each other, and then we apply those to relationships, and we find ourselves getting out of control. So, if I were to ask Cohen, okay, let's take care of the room, let's clean it up, and I didn't give him any sort of direction or guidance, but instead just told him this is the way it has to be done. He would probably be walking around in fear regarding what it would look like when he got done with something. Even if he was feeling good about it from his vantage point, he'd probably first have this thing overriding his feelings toward his performance because dad's going to tell him otherwise. So now he's going to be stuck in a loop of perfectionism as well, and not knowing how to apply that to the way he views it. And then, of course, him going to somebody else and trying to give direction, he already doesn't know what the direction should be exactly because he sees it different than dad. And so he's going to have some conflict and tension with them. So, with all that being said, I think kind of the one thing that the missing piece there is that conversation is that coming to some form of understanding with each other. I am never going to have the exact same, view of my room or my kitchen space or what have you as the next person. Hell, man, when we moved into this new space, I just needed to get stuff moved so I could clean the old place and then get stuff put in the new place. So, I didn't like draw out a schematic and say, okay, this is where all the plates are going to go. This is where all the glasses are going to go. I put stuff away. So it was out of the way. And that's a lot of times what we do when it comes to getting things clean. It's just get stuff out of the way. So if we already put ourselves like to a certain standard of just getting it done, and then now when somebody's doing it differently, we say we need you to clean up, and then we're giving them specifics as to how it needs to be done. We're not giving them the same form of uh, compromise that we do for ourselves, even though, and probably if we got to sit back and think about it, we'd want to do it differently. So I think that's kind of the disconnect sometimes, is just having that conversation with oneself and then having that conversation with our kids, our family members. So if I were to approach Cohen and, talk about getting something clean, I'd probably say, all right, buddy, let's start to put some things away. What could you do in this situation with this thing that you would be happy with the outcome based on how you cleaned up? And then if he told me something and I immediately said, well, no, that's not really how you do it, then he's already feeling that perfection loop and, the inability to ever actually create a satisfactory outcome for his father. So the conversation doesn't mean, they get to do whatever they want. And you just say, cool, looks great. But you can have hopefully open ended questions and ongoing conversations about what it might look like to have a clean space. Come to an agreement, come to an understanding. That was something that I struggled with in my marriage, and I've talked about it before, is that I would, without sometimes even saying it, I would just leave the kitchen dishes alone because I wanted to be with Cohen maybe before the end of the night, and then I wanted to get to sleep because I had the next day coming up. And I didn't relay that message to my wife. So instead, she just sees, oh, well, he obviously doesn't have respect for this place. Surely probably doesn't have respect for me and our shared living quarters. So now, I guess that means, he's not putting the priorities of the family and the needs of the family up there anymore. For some reason, he's thinking of himself only. Not saying that's what she thought, but I wouldn't doubt it if something similar was part of that thought process of hers. So we didn't have an understanding. We didn't come to an agreement. Instead, I just kind of took my situation and applied it to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's the big miss that we have as parents who are triggered by these sort of things, is like we forget to get on the level of our kids. We expect their little brains to operate as, as adults, 30 or 40 something year olds, and that's just not the case. They're just little forming play-doh balls, and they're changing all of the time, and just when you think you've got their personality figured out, they're going through a new stage and they've got new friends and they're doing new things, and they're learning and growing away from that, and I think we really miss that a lot, as like defining what it looks like. Oftentimes, it's so passive that we have, and I'm guilty of it too, of just go clean your room, and then they come out and say it's done, and then you go up there and there's stuff still on the floor or shoved into the corner, or the bins are out, or they're not put in the right bins, or whatever. Their beds. Or they're under the beds. Yes, that's it. That's how he
Good.
cleans.
Solid point there, kid.
Yeah. I like his little chime-ins that he's got over here from the peanut gallery. But that's my ball that I dropped there with them. I told you, I don't make messes. You don't make messes. Okay, I'll make sure to tell the audience that. We have the cleanest kid in the world. He doesn't make messes.
Yeah. Spotless. He's the first one of his kind. I'm amazed, man. That is remarkable. Let's take a tour, everybody. Come on.
Those are the times that I've dropped the ball, and then I end up getting mad at them because they didn't put it away right or do it right. But it takes an intentional mindset of teaching our kids this. There's not a passive point, I think, that we'll have in the 18 years of having our kids here. There's not should be a passive point of parenting where it's like, well, they know better. Like, that's our job, is to teach them and understand why they should know better and how they know better. And even when they don't know better in the moment, we got to have the patience to be able to talk them through and give them the words to be able to know better the next time, rather than it just be about shame, so that they just want to run away from it, ignore it, or pretend it doesn't exist, and then they keep making the same mistakes over again. We have to clearly define every single time you say your room where the toys go, where the bins go. And shoot, sometimes you may even need to go participate in that, to remind them and show them. Because with the mind of a 9-year old and 7-year olds, they forget things daily. They forget things as you're saying them. They can repeat it back to you, and then by the time they get to the top of the stairs, they've completely forgotten what the direction was. And it's not intentional, but we take it so personally as parents. And I think that if we're gonna teach our kids the good habits and want them to be clean, respectful human beings in a roommate shared living situation, then we have to be very intentional and active with that process all the way until they move out. And we can't expect them to be, hotel cleaners.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about a couple and their challenges that they face. Let's just say that the husband is 6.5 feet tall, and he's got a wife who's just over 5 feet tall, and he's putting stuff away, and he starts putting things in the kitchen counter or cabinets, and he's putting things up high, and then she maybe she goes to look for something one day, and next thing you know, it's on the very top shelf, so she either has to climb on the countertops to get to it, or she has to ask him. She probably would have a conversation with him, chuckling, saying, "Hey, I use this regularly, but I can't expect to have to reach up there every time or to climb on the counters every time to take care of this, or to get this down to use it." And he's living in his brain. He's like, I can reach it, no problem. This is the best way to put this away because it's something I don't use very often. Who knows? It's the unknown that we need to kind of make known in order to make a proper working household, like you said. So when we want our kids to clean up, maybe we think we have the best organizational skills, and these kids need to see our point of view, or maybe, just maybe, we need to hear from kiddo who says, actually, my bin of toys goes down here. My race cars go in this particular bin, but the racetrack goes over here because the race cars I sometimes use on the floor downstairs, and the racetrack needs to be out of the way, so I can just simply grab the race cars and not have to worry about digging through the racetrack. Sometimes it takes a little bit more understanding and a little bit more curiosity in order to find that our kids are actually probably brilliant when it comes to putting things away. And I can tell you right now, if you don't have a conversation and understanding, and really be curious about it, somebody like myself could say, well, the countertop is where just everything gets dumped off until I can get to it later. So I don't have a structure because I wasn't ever having a conversation with people. I was just doing things the way I wanted to, and then also feeling a little bit nervous about putting it away because it wouldn't be done right. So the easiest thing is it's visual, it's there. I know I'll have to get to it someday. So I could just grab and put stuff away when I have the time. And then somebody else would say, that is the worst system ever. I can't believe that you'd think that. And then therefore I'm back in that whole situation again of feeling uncomfortable about how I do things compared to how somebody else does some things. And you know what? Truth is we all probably want a clean space. Let's just have a conversation. It'll be great. Yes, it'll take some time, but our kids will actually probably sponge up all that stuff, and it'll go much better if we give them the time.
Yeah, I think that our expectations are always so different from person to person, and we don't talk about those expectations or define them. And then it ends up becoming this unspoken expectation of why are you doing it this way? I do it this way. This makes sense to me. And there's no pre-conversation before that. And like, sometimes I have to prepare myself for too. If I'm letting the kids go clean up a mess by themselves, I have to sometimes prepare that there will be a bigger mess in there, than when I left it. and that is something that I have to remind myself as an expectation, because like our 7 year old will say, I want a vacuum, but that vacuum cleaner is a little too heavy for her, and she drops it every time, and it's one of those bagless ones, and it pops open and the dust just flies everywhere, and then she's coming in and saying, Coley, I need help, and 9 times out of 10, when it's, I can do it by myself, and you go let her to do it, can you open this for me? Can you reach this for me? Can you do this for me? And it's still, I have to participate in that rather than expect her to do it on her own and then be mad when she doesn't meet all of the expectations or see the thing on the ground still, and that was something that I always struggled with too in my own dynamic as a kid of, I did it, but it was never good enough. And there was always another follow-up conversation, a follow-up clean, and if you're going to do something, do it right, but no one was ever showing me what right exactly looked like time and time again to get it ingrained in me. It was maybe like a one thing, and then you were expected to remember all the details of where everything went, and there was no notes or blueprint or map for you to reference. You just had to do it, and you learned by disappointment and shame, and I fall into that sometimes, man, and I really have to be conscious of reminding myself that it's my job to help them with this and not create that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It just makes me think the concept kind of just exists in your head to not talk about it unless it becomes a problem, you know, unless it becomes a boiling point. I think that was something that we talked about earlier is that, you know it's an issue, and then therefore you have the resentment, and something just eventually boils over. You have a different standard of cleanliness from your parents and you and stuff, but you don't really talk about it until it becomes an issue. That's what I experienced when I was little. It was a parent walking around the house fuming because it wasn't done to their standards, but I didn't know what the standards were. I just knew that they were upset about it. And so then that perfection loop comes into play again, and maybe we grow up and we meet somebody, and like somebody who accepts me for who I am, and believes in me, and I feel safe. And then all of a sudden there's a difference that wasn't talked about, but then becomes a resentment and an issue, and you feel a little less safe, you feel a little less comfortable. Maybe you have that kid inside of you that once again says, oh, you're not good enough, and I'm never going to be good enough. And therefore also too, you didn't talk about it healthy, in a healthy way with your parents when you were young, because you didn't talk about it unless it was an argument. So now you're finding yourself at a situation where you're having an argument with somebody because that's what you knew. That's what you did. You didn't talk about it unless it became an issue. Hold on to it, hold it inside. You don't want to be, you know, somebody who's in conflict. You want to avoid conflict, but then the conflict finds itself exploding at some point. So then you have an issue, and then you go back to your own self and say, I'm just not good enough for this person. I don't feel safe anymore. So the thing to try and do to break that habit is to be curious, be open, have that open conversation with somebody and say, in truth, it is more powerful to say, I'm not sure how to best do this. Here's one way that I'm considering how we can kind of maintain the schedule. Maybe we make a list of things on the marker board or something. Or maybe we just need to have a conversation as we go through it, because I want to understand you, and I think you want to understand me, and then we can get to the best place. Or you can continue that loop of, I'm not good enough. They're not doing things that I want to have done. I'll just ignore it. I'll just ignore it. Dang it, what's going on? We're not getting this figured out. I'm so upset. And you keep that process of poor communication, miscommunication, and hurt feelings and expectations going on inside the head, and then out, in word vomit and destruction.
And I think for a lot of people, maybe this is just me, but I'm telling myself it's quite a majority of people that are clean freaks or have this kind of experience, growing up and with their parents and have spousal relationships, that this becomes an issue. And I think a lot of couples use this as a platform of resentment when other stuff is going on. This is like some of the most common stuff that couples fight about is dishes and trash and responsibilities and chores and cleanliness. And, who's taking that? And I think a lot of the times, we don't talk about it, and you get into a routine of I'm the laundry guy, she's the dish gal, or I cook or whatever. And then the more that you don't talk about that consistently, the more that those issues of resentment can build up. And then you start saying, you bring out into a fight it's completely unrelated, how you do this and you never get this in return, or when's the last time you've cooked a meal, or those kind of conversations. And I'm speaking off of personal experience from a conversation that I just had with my own wife a couple of nights ago, where I'll turn my web camera here, and you can see just this pile of clothes that I'm just sitting in this messy room here. Everything in our office has been backed up everywhere. There's nail polish everywhere, and just
I
and we
see some
talked about,
space in those cubes that you could stuff a few
yeah,
things.
I have to like tiptoe to get to my desk here, and position the camera just right so you can't see the mess. And I'm in the corner, and it's driving me nuts, and it's driving my wife nuts, and she had a moment of resentment to me the other night about, you know, basically thinking that I'm not doing enough, around here. And we've come off of this, in our last episode I talked about the death in our family here, and how chaotic it's been. So we've been, our schedule and our foundation and structure of week to week has kind of gotten to shit as we've been navigating this. So things have piled up, things have gone here, there. The responsibilities have been taken over by once, and or that were one person's are now the other person's, and they're doing more, and this person's doing more of this thing, and we just the episode before that, me and you had talked about this game, the fair play game, that we were playing to really like divvy up these responsibilities and chores and stuff like that. And again, then all this chaos happened, with my wife being away, and you're not able to play this game week to week like we structured, and then, like I'm saying, these unspoken resentments are building up of, there's all this laundry, and I did it last week in this. And we were hashing it out last night, talking about it, and it took a lot of putting down the walls of self-defense and being really curious about it, because I want to go in with what I, the last 3 weeks I've been cooking this and cleaning that, and you've been gone, and I've been doing this. How dare you say that I haven't been doing enough? I've been doing, here's a list of things that I've been writing over the last 3 weeks, just for when you said, I knew you were going to say it. And I have this list right in here just for this time. I really wanted to like take it there, but I had to really step back and notice all of what's going on with the loss of her father, and the grieving and mourning that's been happening, and the chaos of trying to balance work with the stages of grief and loss, and I just kind of was open to asking questions about, what's really going on here, and why are you feeling this way? And, I would maybe tend to disagree here in most circumstances, but if you feel that I'm not doing enough, I'm open to hearing what you would like to see more of. I want to support you through this time. And by the end of the conversation, it really ended up being her opening up about, God, none of this is really about the messy house. It's just like an overwhelm of life. And I've been feeling really depressed lately, and shutting down internally, and not opening up and communicating. And that was very enlightening and validating to hear, and I would have never gotten to that point of enlightenment and epiphany of our relationship and where we're at right now if I had taken the self-defense route and gone with my list of things that I've been doing over the last month, and because we were able to put down those walls of self-defense and talk about this openly and in a curious way, we unlocked a new door to our relationship and where we're currently at right now and what we're going through internally and individually. So again, I think a lot of people grasp at these things because they're so easy to like go into a fight or argument with, or to like communicate your negative feelings about your day or your experience about what's going on in your life. That it's just like the first thing you come through the door and you see the trash isn't there, and you're like, well, great, this is what I'm going to use to launch off this platform and start this conversation. When maybe it really doesn't have to do with the trash. But then all of a sudden, all we're doing is fighting about the trash because we are so self-defensive about the trash. So I was just going to take it out. You don't give me the chance. And now we never get to the underlying thing about what's really going on with this person, because we're just locked into this superficial trash argument.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think of the quote from the Bible. I don't remember exactly the quote, but love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. You know, that's not going to be love if you're doing that. And so therefore, yeah, you guys making that breakthrough is kind of one of those examples of pushing past the idea of making a collection of what you believe are sins against the others or sins against the household or what have you, but rather a point of curiosity to talk through it because you both were feeling the strain, which also makes me think of Mike Tyson's quote. What was it? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and
No,
you
no, no.
received
It's
you received some.
everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, I got it close. I wasn't too
Sorry,
but
Mike
yeah,
Tyson.
like
Please don't punch me in the face. Because
but I mean, the truth is that we get comfortable, and I think that's the idea of it. He says it in a more blunt way, but we get comfortable in our space, and it sounds like things are going well in our heads, but if we are not being curious and not being proactive, we're probably missing something. And then the last thing we want is for somebody to say, "You're missing something." We want them to say, "Oh, here's something that I noticed." We want to change the script so we feel comfortable with each other. And I said to the woman that I've been seeing for a while now, she actually just met Cohen for the first time recently because we finally got to that stage, which is pretty great. Um, he had a couple of big emotional moments in front of her, which she doesn't. I'm sure she hasn't experienced something quite like that directly with her kids. And I said to her, if there's ever a point where you might have like a criticism about my parenting, please feel free to bring it up and talk with me about it, because I know that I'm not a perfect parent, and it doesn't help. I don't help myself by rejecting feedback. I don't help my son by rejecting feedback. So when you guys come up with that epiphany, you realize that you are accepting feedback and you are accepting the opportunity for uh, a different path, a different point of view, a different opportunity for success. I think that's the big thing, is like feedback can be looked at as, a point of contention, or it could be looked at as an opportunity to really kind of, you know, break through to the next level of success in the relationship and with your household operations. So, I want to say that that is awesome that you guys succeeded there. And, back to the idea that we talked about many. Oh man, probably more than a year ago. Like improv comedy, what's the idea to keep the joke going along? You say yes and so you're continuing the conversation in a positive, productive way. You're giving the opportunity to kind of continue to keep the ball rolling as opposed to stopping it dead and going a different route. So if we're going to have a conversation about the household when we don't see eye to eye, if we use an affirmative and we keep the conversation going in a positive language direction, there's much more opportunity there for you two to connect, for you to make a difference, for you to be happy with each other rather than feeling like you're at odds.
yeah, I've been reading this book lately, We Over Me, by Kadeen and DeVale Ellis. They do a podcast, and they got a book, and it's been pretty good just starting it. And something that hit me today was, like, God, so many families operate in this, like, what will people think if, you know, and the power of like what I've really found in a relationship is that like they're each different, right? Like all of my and your relationships are never going to be the same. We're going to have different struggles, and there may be things that are closely related, and we may have kids going off to college together, but the issues and the obstacles that we have to overcome when dealing with that are wildly personal. But yet we always like look to these books and podcasts of how are other people doing it, like give me the formula. And I think like it's great to take into account of those things, but it really comes down to a personal level of each individual relationship is different. And the book was really celebrating and talking about like do what you need to do for what works for your relationship. And there's two people in this relationship, not 7.6 billion or whatever opinions. There really should be only two, and what those two people need and are able to communicate in those needs and boundaries and wants are the most important thing. And fuck all the outside opinion and noise coming in telling you how you should or what you shouldn't do to parenting. Like find what works for you and what creates beauty and love in your household, and that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and the power of that too that you just pointed out is that that a lot of people go to self-help books, and they're self-help is a very, very successful area of the bookstore, and the reason for that is because people go in with open minds when they're trying to find something to help themselves. And what's great about the relationship is that's what that person's supposed to be there for. Is not to go to them with a closed mind and the idea like I got to argue that I'm right all the time, but instead have that same approach. Go in with the open mind. Oh, we're struggling. I got to find something to help figure this out. Well, first part about that is probably going with an open mind to the person that you are having maybe an issue with. Keep a curiosity about it. Do we honestly want to suggest and believe in the thought that this person is out to get us, even though they decided that they wanted to give their life to us at some point? Or do we want to suggest the idea like this is actually something that they want to work with me on? Maybe we need to work on our communication, sure, but I think that starts with me having that open mind toward them directly rather than keeping my mind closed to them and then opening it up to a stranger.
Yeah, I think a lot of our expectations are on how other people should think because of how our brains think. And the only way that we're really going to understand somebody is if we let them speak and we're really curious and open to what they have to say. And that's not always easy as a human being, man. I'll tell you. you know,
Yeah,
especially
well, it's funny,
especially as a
it's
parent too. When you're negotiating or disagreeing with a 9-year-old, it's really
yeah, yeah.
easy for us to have that 36-year-old brain that goes, "I know way more than you, punk. You need to listen to me." Like.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the kids experience that looking glass self from an early age as well, as they're looking up to the adult, and they're making a story in their head about what the person they look up to thinks of them. So their definition of self is that looking glass self is I am the person that that I believe the other person believes me to be. And so we constantly walk around with an identity crisis because we're too busy trying to create stories in other people's heads about us, that's what we put so much of our mental anxiety and emotional state into, rather than keeping that open conversation. And so we just need to start giving ourselves a little bit more grace and a little bit more curiosity toward others, because we don't want to make up their story about us for them. We want to have a conversation with them and come to a good agreement and understanding in order to best serve each other. So yeah, getting rid of that terrible, terrible piece of miscommunication that we run into all time and again by holding it in until we blow up, and instead just being open and honest and say, you know what, I do still trust this person to give me what I would like for them, to give me, and I would want to do the same in return, not out of judgment, but out of curiosity.
Good stuff, brother. Well, on that note, I've got to go clean the house. But thanks
Well,
for the talk
you
today.
got you got you got the one person there with you who knows how to get everything perfectly cleaned, as you said earlier. So just seek some guidance from him.
He's not messy, so we're gonna go put that theory to the test right now.
I believe in you.
Well, thank you, brother, and thank you guys for listening here. I'll drop that book in the show notes for you, We Over Me. And best way to support this show is to give us a review. So please go do so. We love to hear from you guys. And until next time, I'm your host, CJ.
I'm JJ.
What's that, Caden?
And that's Caden.
You want people to give me money?
No.
Yeah, let's do it. You heard it here. Caden says give money.
All right, guys. This has been another show of the ADH Dads. Until next time.